How are y'all doing? How are you holding up? It's been a scary couple of days for a lot of people in the United States. I've had, frankly, a really shitty couple of weeks, but the last few days have been particularly bad. I got several death threats, including people who, in their messages, would list my full legal name and address. Yeah. A couple of my mutuals had to take their social media accounts private after receiving pretty terrifying threats, some of them very violent and explicit. You may have heard there was a website that was put up basically wanting to dox people, try to get them fired from their jobs, or you know what, incite political violence. There were more than 30,000 submissions of people who didn't appropriately mourn Charlie Kirk's death in a way that MAGA finds socially acceptable. And I found out earlier today that that website has been taken down, and I'm probably gonna do a whole video on that in a minute. We saw historically Black colleges and universities get bomb threats, threats of violence. We saw Democratic lawmakers have phoned in threats against them. And obviously, every trans person in this country is under particular threat right now because we see the messaging from the regime. They're trying to find any way that they can possibly make this something that they can connect to a trans person to push their false narrative that this is the radical left that is responsible, even though we know that there are plenty of trans people who are on the far right, right? Caitlyn Jenner. I mean, we could do a whole list. Being trans does not mean that you are necessarily politically on the left. There's actually a good article, earlier this year in the Gay and Lesbian Review about this very issue. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll drop the link in the video description. It's worth a read. So it's just been a very unsafe time the last few days for everybody here. We're seeing a desire from the Trump regime and from the MAGA base to want to quash people's First Amendment right to free speech. We are seeing open threats and intimidation. We are seeing what is called the chilling of dissent, and I want to talk about that more. Because one of the key ways that we resist a fascist regime is that we do not allow dissent to be chilled. We continue to stand up. We do not allow the regime to scare us into backing down, staying quiet, going behind closed doors, silencing our voice, and causing us to give up our rights. A would-be authoritarian can only succeed in cementing their power if you choose to give up. As long as we are still fighting, they cannot win. The bulk of their tactics, y'all, are fear, threats, intimidation, bullying. They rely on you being scared enough to give up. I know I've said this many times before, but it really is a psychological game. They're trying to scare you shitless. The war, the conflict is mostly in your head. It doesn't mean there aren't very real threats in the real world. It doesn't mean that our communities aren't fractured. It doesn't mean that our relationships with other people aren't damaged. It doesn't mean that things aren't bad in this country. But the bulk of the propaganda, the psychological tactics, the strategies that they are employing in their attempt to cement an authoritarian regime in the United States and completely destroy our democracy, they are overwhelmingly happening in your mind. So I want to talk for a second about this concept of chilling dissent, how they're trying to get you to freeze and fall over and give up, and how we're not fucking going to do it. When you feel the propaganda of the regime working on you, you get those kind of, you feel like a bucket of ice water has been dumped over you and your stomach is tied in knots and you're really freaking out. I really encourage you to go seek out stories about the resistance movement in the United States. Either connect with people in real life, your local Indivisible chapter, your local 5051 group, whatever local grassroots group is organizing, go meet with those people face to face, hear about what they're doing, connect with them, draw hope and support and strength from them. Or if you're not able to do that, go find stories online, because there are people all over this country. There are institutions all over this country as well that are standing up and refusing to bend the knee. And the regime, part of their tactic of chilling dissent is not only to make people afraid of speaking out, it's also to quash stories of people who are. It's also to make sure that you don't hear about all of the millions and millions and millions of people who are opposed to what the regime is doing and are actively resisting. They want to chill any further dissent and then make sure that they censor any stories of active dissent. Now, I'd like to point you really quickly to The Intercept. They have a whole section in their publication that is entitled Chilling Dissent. First Amendment Rights Are Under Attack as Powerful Entities Crack Down on Those Who Speak Out. There are a lot of good articles here. It's a series that keep posting more and more articles. And there are some dark stories there about people who are bending the knee, right? Like Columbia University and what have you. And I think those are important stories of what cowards do under fascism, of what appeasers and collaborators do under fascism. But there are also encouraging pieces. So when there's scary news in the headlines and the Republican Fascist Party and Donald Trump are trying to make you believe that their terrible plans are all going to come to fruition, every horrible thing they want to do is going to come to pass and you cannot stop them, it's important after you hear that really scary headline and you get real freaked out and maybe your buddies on social media are also, panicking. It's important that you follow up on that story because so often the regime blusters, they thump their chest a little bit, and then somebody stands up against them. Someone refuses to be chilled and they stand up. And then the regime backs down. I just did a video yesterday about how Donald Trump has decided not to send the National Guard into Chicago after he said it was going to be the Shypocalypse and he was going to declare war on Chicago. Now he's like, well, nothing to see here. We're going to go to Memphis instead. We're going to try and find a city where they will back down. Because guess what? Chicagoans, Governor Pritzker, they would not back down. They refused to be chilled. And the regime chickened out. Because again, the only way they win is if you give up. So when you don't give up, they're like, shit, our psychological tactics aren't working here. We're going to try and pivot and go somewhere else. So you may have seen in the headlines over the last few days, there was a lot of really scary news around this new bill that would give Marco Rubio basically like thought police power in the United States. So I've been sitting on this story for a couple of days because I was like, this sounds really big and scary. They want you to believe that Marco Rubio can just take away your passport and that he can declare any organization he wants a, organization. Criticism of the bill was that Marco Rubio basically could claim the power to designate somebody a ist supporter based solely on what they think. It was real thought police type shit. The whole goal of this legislation was to scare you into not exercising your First Amendment rights, into not joining pro-democracy organizations, human rights organizations, because there would be a fear now that Marco Rubio would declare your speech or the organization that you supported to somehow be, I need to come up with a euphemism, because TikTok is now more heavily censoring, certain things. Insurgency is not the right word, but you understand what I'm saying, right? Right, it's really giving McCarthyism on steroids. So people were really scared, really worried, and already thinking about obeying in advance. But today, there's an update to that story. It is precisely because civil liberties groups refused to stay quiet and pushed back vigorously against this bill that we are now hearing that Republican Florida Representative Brian Mast, who, is sponsoring this, is saying that he is now going to strip out the provision in this bill that would have given Marco Rubio all of that power. The ACLU, of which I am a member, has declared a victory in this regard. They are trying to chill dissent. They're trying to get you to back down. They're trying to do terrible, awful things and hoping that you will be too scared to stand up against it. But just because they're trying, y'all, it doesn't mean that they're going to win. And we know that they won't win as long as we keep standing up. Yes, it involves a measure of personal risk. There is no way to stop the fascists without all of us sacrificing time, energy, labor, money. And some of us will get arrested. Some of us will be brutalized by the state. Unfortunately, that's the reality. It is still worth the risk. It is still worth it to stand up for our liberty and for our children's liberty, for our Constitution, for all of the people who are being targeted by this regime, for all of the trans folks in the US, for all of the immigrants, for all of the historically Black colleges and universities who got death threats and bomb threats this week. We all have to stand up, because if we all stand up together, there is no way that they can silence all of us. The chilling of dissent is a tactic by would-be authoritarians to scare you into submission, and you cannot let it work on you. Your First Amendment rights are your rights. The Constitution still exists. They are trying to trample on it. They're trying to strip you of your rights, but those rights do still exist, and you have to exercise them in order to maintain them. It is because people are standing up, it is because organizations like the ACLU are standing up and pushing back that the regime is failing more often than not. So I know it seems really scary the last few days. They are really quadrupling down on the threats and the bullying. And this is a crucial moment in time where you cannot allow dissent to be chilled. You cannot allow them to be successful in their attempt to bully you into giving up our democracy.